yes, she is. Even when I'm a mess, I still put on the best with an ass on my chest. Oh, yes, I'm a superwoman, yeah. Oh, let me tell you, I am a superwoman. Oh, yes, I am. Oh, yeah, yeah. Even when I'm a mess, I still put on the best with an ass on my chest. Oh, yes, I'm a superwoman. Yes, I am. Said I'm a superwoman. Yes, I am. I am a superwoman. Yes, you are. You are a superwoman. Yes, you are. You are a super, yeah. Yes, you are. You are a superwoman. Yes, you are. Oh, Puleka, Puleka. Puleka, 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 Masulu. Puleka, Masulu. Puleka, Masulu. Ay, Puleka, Puleka, Puleka. Puleka, Masulu. Puleka, Masulu. Puleka, Masulu. Ay, Puleka, Puleka. Puleka, 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 Masulu. Puleka, Masulu. Puleka, Masulu. Ay, Puleka, Puleka, Puleka. Puleka, Masulu. Puleka, Masulu. Puleka, Masulu.
I'm very honored to be with you here today. Joining me is my president, Polo Leteka, and Nomonde of ABSIP Women in Focus. She's also been appointed to the NEC, and she's going to be heading up the stakeholder engagement. So please give a round of applause for Nomonde. I'd also like to welcome all our partners who are here with us today. I recognize there's a representative from the CFA board. I recognize there's representative from some of our partners in YLC. I also recognize that there's a lot of people here who are ABSIP members who are joining us from the student chapters. And lastly, but not least, I'd also like to recognize our speakers who are going to be engaging you here today. Please give a round of applause for everyone. It is 10:10. I would like to first apologize for the parking mishaps. I think because of the BRICS summit, there isn't adequate parking for everyone, but I hope that your cars are parked well and they're well taken care of. And I know that one person from our student chapter is also trying to deal with all the parking logistics outside. So, yeah. So I think we've got Professor Marala with us here today as well. He's joining us virtually from Japan. So, Professor, I'd like to welcome you with us. We are here as Women in Focus for ABSIP to really celebrate the women out there. Our pertinent topic for today is leadership in AI and sustainability. This is a very important topic. Firstly, because we are passionate about growing leaders within ABSIP. We've got years of experience. We've got 28 years of actually being in existence as ABSIP. But as Women in Focus, we have been solely focused on developing the youth and the women in our industry, which is the financial services sector. The other thing that is important about this topic is actually yesterday I was at the Duke University, I was doing my course, and we were going through 16 capabilities within the technology space. And out of those 16, I personally could only recognize 5. And that's just to recognize them, not necessarily have deep knowledge of them. And one of those was artificial intelligence. There's things like blockchain. There's things like algorithms. You know, many of those technological advances that some of us don't actually know about. Now, how are we going to lead and how are we going to shape strategy if we don't actually understand what technology is? So I think it's a very, very important topic for us, and I hope that you're going to walk away here today understanding the technologies that are out there and how you as women can actually lead given these technologies that are actually there to enable you to lead better. And the second thing is also, please, we've got hashtags, ABSIP Women in Finance. Please follow us. We've also got our sponsor, which is Ashburton Investments, so you can also just follow them as well. We've got other sponsors as well, Future Growth Asset Management. We've got Sekese. So I think Tapiwa will put them up just now in a second. And if you also need the Wi-Fi code, you can actually access it online, which is the capital hashtag dash connect, and the password is connect me. Okay, so that's all the formalities out there. And then the other exciting thing is that we are going to keep this interactive throughout the day. We're going to be providing gifts. I believe Nobukosi, my partner, has already provided a gift for the person who came here first today. So brace yourself. We need you to focus, engage us on our social media, because there are beautiful prizes that are going to be handed out throughout the day, including things like Carol Boy's dinner set. So ladies, you know, that's really worth focusing for today. Okay, now I'd like to welcome on stage Nomonde Zwane. Nomonde, please come up on stage.
There's quite a lot of work that we do as ABSIP. Maybe first to introduce myself, Nomonde Zwane. I wear a lot of hats. So I'm also, you know, in my full-time day job, I'm an investment multi-manager at the Eskom Pension and Provident Fund, and also an independent principal officer of the Alexander Forbes Retirement Fund. So I've got a lot of things that I tap into, and it's actually quite opportune when you look at the topic sustainability and the advancement of technology. In my personal capacity and in my different roles, I've never been in a boardroom lately that sustainability or the advancement of technology is not part of the agenda. It is quite a critical thing to discuss, and more importantly, what we want to unpack today is how do we show up as women leaders in this space, and how do we change the narrative in terms of showing up as women leaders. But first and foremost, I want to also extend a special welcome to Professor Marola, and we are going to have our Deputy Governor joining us as well. Special welcome as keynote speakers. Special welcome to our panel experts. We've got quite a very skilled and robust panel that's going to come through today. We want to welcome you all. Welcoming all the ABSIP community, both online as well. We do welcome you in terms of joining us, and we do appreciate your presence and taking time out. I sat back when just reflecting around the journey of AWIF, especially for the past 3 years. We've been quite deliberate as AWIF, not only to be seen in August when it's Women's Month and, come out of the sessions all happy but without tangible outcomes. So the past 3 years, AWIF has had a strategy to actually implement and be a driver of tangible change in the industry. We identified a gap in the industry in terms of how do we facilitate and how do we collaborate with our sponsors to actually make a tangible outcome for women in the industry. One of the key things that we pride ourselves is having established, a pipeline of academic courses that have been supported by industry from all tiers in terms of women leaders and also women coming up in the ranks. And it's something that AWIF has been quite deliberate, and we are proud to announce today, by the end of this year, between our courses through the CFA, the IODSA, Frankel Templeton course, and Safka Gibbs course in private equity, we would have sponsored 100 women in the industry. That's actually impacting women's lives, actually having tangible outcomes. to the woman professional. To get a CFA ESG certification, for example, does have tangible outcomes to someone's career. So we are very deliberate about that support and not only having conversations today, but what we are saying, these conversations today, beyond today, what are we going to do about it in terms of collaboration as an industry and also providing those opportunities. The main thing we are very big on is around collaboration. So I think throughout the conversations today, I hope when we do, even network, we should come out to say, how then do we collaborate as an industry to drive the sustainability agenda, to drive how we support and actually get ahead of advancements in technology. I just came back from a work trip in London, and it's actually quite amazing how much of the global community is talking the same language in terms of sustainability and also the advancement of technology. And we want to bring the industry closer, and without a doubt, collaboration is going to be quite key as an industry to move forward. But not to take too much time, I would like to also hand over to Pulu, who's going to also give just an overall strategic overview around ABSIP as the newly re-elected president, Madam President, as we fondly call her, just to give you a sense of where we have been as ABSIP and where we are going. And we hope today will be such a fruitful session for you, and you come out quite enriched. And also, let's move the conversation forward in terms of future collaborations as an industry. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nomonde. And good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Happy Women's Month. My name is Polo Letika. I am the newly appointed president of ABSIP. As well as the outgoing president of ABSIP. I should have said outgoing president first and then newly appointed. I want to first acknowledge the ABSIP NEC. We've got NEC members in our midst today who have previously been AWIF NEC members. Now they are ABSIP NEC members. So congratulations, ladies. And I want to acknowledge our main sponsor, Ashburton Investments. Thank you very much for your sponsorship. I want to acknowledge the SKX Poverty and Future Growth Fund Asset Managers as also sponsors to this event. I want to acknowledge Nicola Gab, who is representing the CFA Society today. And I want to thank you, Nicola, for the continued support that we get from the CFA and the continued partnership. And we look forward to working together going forward. I want to acknowledge our sister organization, the BMF. I haven't seen them yet, but I know that they are in the audience, so they'll be with us, so welcome. And I know that the Deputy Governor of the Reserve Bank, Ms. Fundi Chazibana, should be here anytime soon, so I want to welcome her in advance. She's outside. And she will be giving us a keynote address. And of course, we want to welcome Professor Chilizi Marola all the way from Japan. We look forward to hearing what he has learned in the short time that he has been away from us. And I want to acknowledge our online audience. Welcome, everybody. We are competing with a very important summit that is taking place, which is the Global Summit. So I'm quite impressed that we were able to garner this audience this morning because in the bigger scheme of things, we might seem a bit insignificant. So we really appreciate you prioritizing being here with us today and not going with the big wigs, as it were. It makes us feel a bit important and relevant. So ABSIP has been around since 1995, as many of you may know, so we are marking 28 years today, almost as old as our democracy. And the question that we are often faced with, which we ask ourselves, welcome, Deputy Governor, please come to the front. We have been waiting. No pressure. You haven't missed much, luckily. I was just starting to talk about the history of ABSIP, that we've been in existence now for 28 years, which is almost the same age as our democracy. And I think similar questions to what we often ask about, what have we achieved as a new democracy since 1994, are asked about what has ABSIP achieved. And it's not a very easy answer a question to answer rather, because yes, indeed, there have been strides that have been made. We are today able to garner rooms full of black professionals, full of women, full of black women professionals, full of firms that are owned by black professionals in the financial services sector, which was not the case in 1995. We see, we talk about there being more diversity in the sector. But we still have questions around, does diversity necessarily mean inclusivity or inclusion? And I think that's a question that remains unanswered, or at least the answer from what we have been able to garner or to gather over the past few years is that whilst we have, we've changed the profile in terms of race and gender of who represents the financial services sector on the face of it, we still find that there are certain, there's almost still a glass ceiling, if you will, in the financial services sector, particularly for women, where whilst we are seeing the advancement of black professionals into more senior positions in the sector, we still find very, very few women, and black women in particular. And in instances where people have risen to the top echelons, we find that we are not able to retain them there. So the issue of inclusion is a very real thing, because what is it that makes us uncomfortable when you occupy these spaces and want to leave after having worked 10, 15, 20 years to rise, to go up the ladder, and then you get to the top and you cannot stay there. It's too hot to handle all of a sudden. So much needs to be, much has to be said about the culture of the institutions that we work in and we work for, in that although we've changed the face and the gender and the race, the culture by and large remains the same. What does that mean? We are Africans. We are on the African continent. We are South Africans. We have institutions that have been around for decades, that have established themselves, that are deeply, deeply rooted in our economy, and that are very important actually to our economy. The financial services sector remains one of the most important sectors of our economy, because we are the ones who drive capital allocation. We are the ones who determine where investments are going to be made. So we actually also, in a sense, determine which sectors are going to get how much money and therefore how much transformation, if that's what we want to achieve. So we're a very critical part of our economy. But those decisions are still made in the main by male and pale, despite the fact that we are there in the room. The cultures that continue to permeate the boardrooms that we sit in, the offices that we occupy, are such that we still have to adhere to what our erstwhile leaders or bosses, if you will, taught us as this is how we do things around here. This is how we do things in the financial services sector. There's very little to say is African about our financial services sector today. We still wear the same hats. We still behave in the exact same manner as we did before 1994 in terms of how we look at risk, how we determine where we're going to allocate capital. And that's why, when we did our Township in Bizo series about 2 years ago, it became quite evident that asset allocators were still not allocating assets to underdeveloped areas of our economy, townships, rural areas, where 60% of our population resides, and that 60% is mainly black and poor. So something has got to give. Transformation should not just be about changing the gender and the racial profile, but it should also be about changing the mindset about how do we look at risk, how do we look at mitigating risk, how do we look at blended financing, how do we ensure that we work collaboratively between government and the financial services sector to find solutions that are going to enable us to drive capital where it's needed the most, and that is in those underserved areas. So this is a burning question, and I believe that it has to remain on the agenda of ABSIP to say, how do we bring together the various partners, social partners, business, private sector partners, government partners, to say this is a problem worth solutioning for. We cannot sit here in 2023, 29 years after democracy, 28 years after the establishment of ABSIP, and capital still goes where it has traditionally gone. That is not progress. That is not real transformation. The question is, it's transformation for who? The transformation that we brag about today, when we all brag that we've got BBBE level 1 certificates and level 2 certificates, who's that transformation for? The people that thought that this new democracy and this new institution called ABSIP was not only going to build the pipeline of black professionals and black business in the sector, but also come up with innovative products that are going to start providing real solutions to the challenges that we face as an economy that will propel economic growth. We have not yet gotten there. I'm therefore very excited, Nomonde, that today's discussion is about AI, because artificial intelligence, amongst many other digital technologies, can be the catalyst for coming up with new innovative solutions to address the problems that I've just talked to. And I think that's, for me, important to say that a lot of the time when we talk about technology and technological advancement, we often assume that it's going to displace us, it's going to displace manual labor. Yes, to an extent, it might. It's not a risk that I'm saying we should scoff at or underplay. But I think that there's a greater opportunity for us to actually use these new technologies to help us find solutions to the challenges that I've just referred to today. So with this new NEC, which is made up mainly of women, which I'm excited about, out of the 9 NEC members, we've got 5 women. And they say when you've got a problem, get women to come together and solve it. And I do think that the challenges that I've just outlined now require us to be very intentional, Nomonde, over the next 3 years. We need to say success has to be ABSIP having driven the process of helping us to identify solutions for facilitating access to capital in areas that have hitherto been underserved by owners of capital. So with that, I wish you all good deliberations, successful deliberations. I will stay on for a little bit, but we'll have to leave you. But I'm sure that it will be a successful event. And thank you very much once again, everybody, for joining us this morning.
Thank you, President, for those powerful words. We should not sleep until we make sure that we've effected meaningful change in our society. I'd like to welcome you, Deputy Governor of the Reserve Bank. And without further ado, I'd really like to welcome Prof. I know, Prof, you've got time constraints, so I think I'm going to move over to you so that you can give us a keynote speech. Prof, if I may, I just would like to introduce you, even though I believe you need no introduction. Professor Marwala is South African vendor. He's got a PhD in Artificial Intelligence and Engineering at the University of Cambridge, United Kingdom. He's got a Master's of Mechanical Engineering at the University of Pretoria. He's also got a BSc Mechanical Engineering at the Case Western Reserve University in the USA. Prof, I know that you studied at St. John's College as well, so I'd like to acknowledge that. Your professional background, from 2018 to 2023, Prof was a Vice Chancellor and Principal of the University of Johannesburg, South Africa. Before that, for a period of 4 years, he served as a Deputy Vice Chancellor for Research and Internationalization at the University of Johannesburg, South Africa. Again, before that, for a period of 5 years, he served as an Associate Professor and Full Professor at the University of Witwatersrand in South Africa. Prior to that, for a period of 3 years, he was an Executive Assistant to the Technical Director at South African Breweries. Prof. Marwala has been a visiting scholar, professor at universities in the USA, the UK, China, and South Africa. He has extensive academic policy management and international experience and is a co-holder of 5 patents. His research has been multidisciplinary, involving the theory and applications of artificial intelligence to engineering, social science, economics, politics, finance, and medicine. He has served on a variety of global and national policymaking bodies and has worked with such United Nations entities such as UNESCO, UNICEF, World Health Organization, and WIPO. Prof. Mawala is inter alia a fellow of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, I've mentioned, the World Academy of Sciences, the Academy of Sciences of South Africa, and the African Academy of Sciences. Among the awards that Prof. Mawala has received are the Order of Mapungubwe in South Africa, which is the highest honor, and the Academy of South Africa's Science for Society Gold Medal. He was named the 2021 IT Personality of the Year by the Institute of IT Professionals in South Africa. Prof, over to you. Thank you.
No, thank you very much, Masiabe. And also I'd like to acknowledge our Deputy Governor of the Reserve Bank, the President of ABSIP, Madam Nomonde, also Madam Paula, and all esteemed colleagues and guests who are present today. Today I'm going to talk about artificial intelligence and its impact, especially in the financial sector. I have spent a great deal of time, almost all my professional career, as an academic. And one of the reasons why I spent so much time as an academic, almost all the time as an academic, except 2 years when I was brewing beer at South African breweries, not too far from where you are now, I actually believe that if you want to see the fortunes of any nation, you have to look at its teachers. So one of the most important things that we need to get right in South Africa is to get good teachers across all levels, whether it is in primary school or all the way to university. As it has already been mentioned, I was a vice chancellor of the University of Johannesburg. And one of the things that I was absolutely proud of as a vice chancellor of University of Johannesburg was the fact that you could come in grade 0 at the University of Johannesburg at Funda Ujabule and go all the way to high school at UJ Metropolitan and leave after completing your PhD or even postdoctoral qualification. So this idea of having seamless education across the board is very, very important. And the second thing that I'm proud of being a vice chancellor of the University of Johannesburg was the fact that we introduced artificial intelligence as a compulsory course for all our students, over 50,000 students. And of course, this is because illiteracy of the 21st century is not only going to be the inability to read or write, but the inability to understand technologies such as artificial intelligence. Now, if we are to talk about now, I am now a rector of the United Nations University, also an Undersecretary General of the United Nations, which basically means that I'm responsible for United Nations University, but also I'm also an Undersecretary General. And at the same time, I am advising the Secretary General, whom I believe is in Johannesburg, in his scientific advisory board. Now, what do we do here? We do IT in Macau, we do global health in Malaysia. We're located in 13 different countries, but one new addition to the 13 different countries where we operate is the Institute of Artificial Intelligence that we have just launched in Bologna in Italy. Now, and the reason for that is mainly because artificial intelligence is really going to be the engine that is going to transform societies going on. And as I talked this morning, I really drove my own experience in the financial sector and how I view artificial intelligence and what it is going to do. When I'm an engineer, but when I was a professor, there were many students who came and wanted to do master's and doctoral doctoral degrees. And 38 of them actually completed PhD degrees under my supervision. And every now and then, I will get people who wanted to do a postgraduate degree in finance. And that is how I got to work on many projects in finance. But of course, over the years, artificial intelligence has become much more important. Just to illustrate a historical context, AI first came to the fore in 1950 through a paper titled Computer, Machinery and Intelligence by British computer scientist Alan Turing. John McCarthy coined the term artificial intelligence in 1955. Most algorithms, such as the perceptron, backpropagation, and deep learning, that make modern artificial intelligence, including generative AI, were already in place in the 1980s. So why did AI only emerge recently in popular imagination with ChatGPT if it is 73 years old and all the algorithms were already in place in the 1980s? The reason is because we did not have adequate computational power to handle large amounts of data and run large-scale algorithms. So the inadequacy of semiconductor chips delayed the birth of AI as it exists in the popular imagination. But we always knew through Moore's law, which states that the processing power of semiconductors doubles nearly every 2 years, that this moment would come. But the crisis of computer chips marches on, especially given that every 12 months today, the requirement for computational power doubles. To appreciate the impact of AI in finance, it is essential to take a moment to reflect on how banking and financial services evolved. Decades ago, the financial industry was dominated by human interactions, whether you were opening an account, investing in stocks, or applying for a mortgage. Today, these processes are increasingly digitized, automated, and now accelerated by artificial intelligence. The word digital, meaning using ones and zeros to communicate, to represent the cyber world completely, is also transitory. This is because the advent of quantum computing is also upon us, and it does not use ones and zeros, and it has far-reaching consequences. Quantum computing is a type of computing that uses the rules of quantum physics to solve problems that traditional digital computers can solve. Quantum computers can do certain tasks exponentially faster than digital computers. Quantum computers can be used to handle how molecules behave. This could help speed up the process of finding new drugs. They can be used to model financial markets, which could help investors make better decisions about where to put their money. AI models can be trained on quantum computers, which could lead to AI systems that are more powerful and efficient. Current encryption methods could be broken down with the advent of quantum computing, which means we have to rethink cybersecurity of the 21st century. With AI, we are now shifting towards automation of almost everything. In recent years, AI has played a pivotal role in the automation of trading. High-frequency trading, with its negative consequences, such as the flash crash that was witnessed at the New York Stock Exchange, where the stock market crashed momentarily, are powered by AI algorithms and now account for a significant portion of the equity market trades. These algorithms can analyze vast amounts of data, make decisions, and execute trades in milliseconds, far surpassing human capabilities. My PhD graduate, Dr. Brain Leke, who is now a partner of McKinsey and Company in Abu Dhabi, in 2005, applied AI to predict price movements and optimally choose the basket of stocks at the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. AI can be used to price complex financial instruments, such as options, derivatives, and futures. The Black-Scholes equations has been instrumental in pricing European options. The Monte Carlo simulation, which was discovered incidentally during the Second World War in Manhattan project when they were making the atom bomb, is applied to the Black-Scholes equation to price American options that can be exercised anytime before the expiry date. Our former postdoctoral fellow, Professor Sukanta Nayak, who is now based in India, used AI to improve the Black-Scholes price options and derivatives, particularly to estimate the parameters that are used, of course, dynamic, because these are European options in the Black-Scholes equations. Dr. Tsakani Mongwe, who was also my PhD student and now head of market risk and capital analytics at ABSIP, improved these Monte Carlo methods, thereby facilitating efficient pricing of derivatives and other instruments. Together with Tsakani, we wrote a book titled Hamiltonian Hybrid Monte Carlo and Machine Learning on how to improve Monte Carlo simulations to make the pricing of European options much more simpler. AI can also improve decision-making. It can handle missing data, allowing for better decision-making. One of the Nobel Prizes that were won in economics, Akerlof and his colleagues, was on the concept of information asymmetry, which emanates from, we can also reframe it as a missing data problem. And of course, when you come to the global south, where we come from, the concept of missing data is all around us. Dr. Mlungisi Duma, who also was our PhD student and now an application development manager at FNB, actually developed very unique methods of estimating missing data so that we could improve automated decision making, or so that we can be able to do automated decision making in the presence of missing information. And of course, together with him, a book, Artificial Intelligence for Rational Decision Making, is also quite available. Beyond trading, AI provides sophisticated risk management tools. And of course, one of the risk management instruments that we have been working quite extensively on is insurance. How do you build models to estimate risk for insurance purposes? And one of the things that we actually hold a US patent on is how do you price or factor in the disease burden, such as artificial intelligence, such as HIV database and other conditions, to be able to price instruments. And of course, as we work on this, I always say that one of the worst things that any individual can do is to give their data to their insurance companies, because they will start knowing much more about us than before, and that can be quite dangerous. And of course, this calls in upon issues of regulations much more strongly. And issues of credit scoring, which is quite widespread in the banking sector. And one work that we did with Rendani Mbuba of the University of London and Ilyas Bolkabet, who is at the American University of Kuwait when they were PhD students in Johannesburg, was to use AI to predict credit default. And we found out that it can actually be able to do that much better than the existing models, because it can be able to go into the internet and get more information that are quite important for pricing this instrument. AI can help portfolio managers in wealth management firms to make better investment decisions by predicting market movements based on vast and complex database. Furthermore, it can help portfolio optimization by adding the adaptation elements into the choice of portfolio based on the short, medium, and long-term evolution of the markets. Markowitz, who won a Nobel Prize for coming up with the theory of the portfolio theory, actually makes all sorts of assumptions. One of the assumptions, and I'm going to use a bombastic mathematical word, is the stationarity assumption. The fact that the character of the markets are not changing in choosing those baskets is not practical in practical terms. And therefore, the artificial intelligence can be able to improve the selection of a portfolio basket in a dynamic way, making sure that it can be able to evolve as the market evolves. Perhaps one of the most transformative impacts of AI in finance is the degree of personalization it offers. Gone are the days of generic financial advice, of generic pricing as we see it on platforms such as Amazon, where a book, when I buy it from Japan, I pay a higher price than when I buy it from South Africa. Today, robo-advisors use AI to provide personalized investment strategies tailored to individual preferences and risk profiles. And it does not end there. Banks now offer personalized experiences to customers, from tailor-made offers to real-time financial advice, all thanks to AI. It also personalizes demand curves, especially through online platforms. We have written, me and my colleagues have written quite extensively on the role of AI in ushering a new form of economics, redefining the theory of demand and supply, of rational expectation and rational choice. And of course, this requires data and it requires technology. With Evan Hewitz, who is based at the rating agency Standards and Poor, we wrote a book, Artificial Intelligence and Economic Theory, where we were investigating 12 big economic theories: information asymmetry, even behavioral economics, which is quite popular now. But when you automate using AI, you are basically making it a little bit less relevant than if you don't automate it, because you are removing human behavior from decision making. AI transformed fraud detection and prevention. In an era of rampant cybersecurity breaches and fraud, AI is the financial sector's unsung hero. Advanced machine learning models monitor transactions in real time, identifying and flagging unusual activities. This immediate response system has saved billions, can potentially save billions in potential losses. Our work with Albert Murray, the technology director of Hurst Energy Trading in New Zealand. In 2004, we developed an AI system an AI electronic intruder system that monitors the violation of cyberspace. Of course, AI, if I were to quote Charles Dickens, is a tale of two cities. It is ushering the best of times and the worst of times. It is revolutionizing the world of work with an uncertain future of work. It is being weaponized at an astonishing rate, bringing into question the very future of the existence of mankind. But at the same time, it is automating medical care, resulting in better medical offerings. And we have worked with Professor David Rubin over many years on some of the applications of AI in medical care. It is automating transportation, resulting with fewer road deaths. To shape the future of AI, we need governance and ethics. The legitimate concerns about the biases that may inadvertently be built into AI systems must be addressed. A model is as good as the data it is trained on, and historical financial data is not free from human biases. And I'm not even going to talk about synthetic data, which is being used quite extensively to build some of these things, also adding risks into that process. As we move forward, it is crucial to address these issues head on, ensuring that AI tools are transparent, ethical, and fair. Looking forward, and in conclusion, the integration of AI in finance is only set to increase. We are on the cusp of seeing quantum computing merge with AI, potentially revolutionizing data processing in finance. Digital banks fully powered by AI might become the norm. And as cryptocurrency and blockchain technologies evolve, AI could play a pivotal role in untangling complex financial networks. In conclusion, AI is not just a tool in finance, it is the backbone of new financial era. While challenges lie ahead, the opportunities are vast. By embracing AI's potential, ensuring ethical use, and continuously innovating, the financial industry can better serve its clients, shareholders, and society at large. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor, for that insightful speech. I think you raised some key points there in terms of education being the key. Our subject matter today talks about leadership in AI environment. And so one of the key questions that I would like to ask you before I hand over to the floor to ask a question is, because you've written a lot of books on leadership itself, and you've written a lot of books on artificial intelligence, I'd like to know from you, how do we empower the leaders of today to be able to engage with AI in a way that it would make work much more effective, and to make sure that from a sustainability perspective, people don't lose jobs, but we create different types of jobs for women and men to be able to take on. Thank you, Prof. Prof.
Thank you very much for that question. How do we empower leaders today? I think education is quite key. I used to be a board member of NetBank, and I realized how pivotal, especially partnering with universities around, is. So when we talk about organizations as leaders, we need to connect the people whom we lead into places where they can learn about AI. And there are many exciting things that are happening in South Africa. The deep learning in Davos that have been held for the past 6 years are some of the best practices on how you can be able to empower people in industry when it comes to artificial intelligence. And as leaders ourselves, we need to make sure that we understand this technology. Because sometimes when I listen to conversations in boardrooms, I would realize that we can do with much more knowledge of the subject. And of course, knowledge of the subject, I'm not talking about being able to understand what back propagation is. I'm talking about literacy on AI must become something that needs to be done. And when it comes to sustainability and the future of jobs, and here at the United Nations, we have the ILO. And the ILO had a report, International Labour Organization had a report, which was co-chaired by our president, President Ramaphosa, in developing that report on how will the jobs of the future look like and how do we prepare? And my answer to that is that we actually don't know. What we need to do is to be able to give the people good education that will make them to be able to learn new concepts fast, to learn those concepts fast, and to learn new concepts when they come in. Because the pace of technologies that are going to come are going to be quite huge. And the impact they're going to have on the economy is going to be substantial. And how prepared we are is how capable we are to absorb all this technology so that we can be able to build new industries that are going to take care of our people. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. I'd now like to hand over to the floor if anybody wants to ask questions. Otherwise, maybe Tapiwa, you can assist in terms of anyone online who's posed any questions as well. Anyone? Thank you, ma'am. We've got our wonderful ushers walking around. They'll be able to give you a mic and you can ask your question. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Khothatsa Jivani. I'm doing a master's at the University of Johannesburg. It's quite new. It's called MPhil in Digital Built Environment. I have rather a question on AI. Should there be laws put in place for the use of AI? This goes to ethics and morality. So yeah, I have a question with regards to that.
Thank you. Thank you. Prof, did you hear the question?
Yes, I absolutely heard the question.
Okay, thank you, Prof.
I actually think that we need to have guidelines. For example, if you are going to use, I was reading on Financial Times, and I wrote, I think last week or the year before, the week before on the Daily Maverick, the issue of the use of synthetic data. 60% of data that is going to be used to train AI system is going to be synthetic. And of course, it has all sorts of implications. Sometimes we have to use synthetic data because there's no data. And if it is a life and death application like health, then of course we need to have laws that make sure that people are informed and that issues of safety are actually safeguarded. So the World Health Organization has ethical guidelines on the use of AI in medicine. The UNESCO, our sister organization here, has developed AI ethical guidelines. They are guidelines, they are not laws. Some will have to be laws, some will have to be standards. The International Standard Organization is going to do that. Some will have to be guidelines or best practices. We need all of that. But for us to be able to do that in South Africa, we need to make sure that our lawmakers are actually literate when it comes to technology in general and AI in particular. So the issue of educating ourselves, all of us, is more urgent than ever before. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. I know that you are short on time, but I believe that my partner in crime, my Deputy President Langa Madonko, is in the audience, so I know he was very keen to engage with you, so I will give him the floor so he can ask some questions.
Good afternoon, Prof. Thank you so much for making time. I think my questions are in line with South Africa and its readiness for the jobs of the future. What do you think are some of the things that we need to be doing from a policy perspective to ensure that we align our education in the direction that will allow us to not only be competitive, but to lead in the area of the future of technology? Then my second question, and I repeat, I'm being bullied here, is with regards to investment. What do you think we need to be thinking about with regards to specific areas of investment, especially considering that South Africa, the economy has slowed, that will help to give impetus to growth of our economy? Thank you.
No, thank you very much. On education, are we ready? I was reading on Financial Times that there is a war of NVIDIA chips that are so crucial for training large language models. And I was reading that Saudi Arabia and UAE is basically going on a buying spree of this. And I was asking myself, where is South Africa in all these conversations? Are we even thinking about this? And of course, all of us, whether we are in industry, whether we are in government, have to take responsibility. So yes, we have excellent institutions in South Africa that are well equipped to take us to another level. But we need to make use of them. We need to integrate them into our workspaces. We need to make sure that they solve the right problems at the research level, the problems that confront us here in South Africa. When it comes to investment, I think when it comes to AI, and I explain it in my speech, it's about data. So we need to invest into the infrastructure of data. It's about processing data. The computer chips, semiconductor chips, data centers are things that we also need to invest in. Sometimes when I go to boardrooms, people talk about cloud computing, and there's nothing wrong with cloud computing. But everybody knows that the edge computing, which means that you are as close to your computational infrastructure as possible. That is why many people would like to live as close to the stock exchange as possible, the traders, because the time difference the distance can make a huge amount of distance. So we need to also build infrastructure for processing data. And of course, it consumes lots of energy, which is another complication that we need to untangle. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. What is your time looking like? I know there's one question that is burning, but I just want to know.
I can take one question.
Okay, thank you, Prof. My lady, I saw your hand was up. Do you want to ask a question?
Hello, everyone. I wanted to ask, do you think that AI has a space in learning institutions? And just you spoke about how if we want to make policies and regulations that people first have to be educated on AI. But now as it stands, how do we make a space for AI when AI is so heavily banned currently in learning institutions?
No, I think we should make it, and we have good practices at University of Johannesburg. All the students have to take AI certificate. They can't graduate from undergrad without taking it, and they are given a supplementary certificate. You have completed AI course, and it's not a technical course. It is actually a literacy course, So let's do that. And there are good examples at other universities across the world. You have many opportunities to reform our education system so that it makes people understand technology. I always say this. that the education of the 21st century requires those who are studying science and technology to also do human and social sciences in their curriculum. And those who are doing human and social sciences to also do science and technology in their curriculum. When I was an undergrad student in United States of America studying engineering, we were required to take 10 semesters of human and social sciences. I took 3 semesters of acting. I took 10 semesters of 5 semesters of economics. So our education must become much, much more multidisciplinary. And the reason for that is because technology is no longer working alone. If you are working on a speech recognition tool, you have to understand language. If you are working on the issue of finance, you have to understand politics, because the political economy is not just the economy, it's the political economy that drives society. So we need to make space to ensure that our people are enriched when it comes to education.
What a beautiful engagement, Prof. Thank you so much. We are so honored to have you here today. And yeah, we wish you had more time to spend with us, but unfortunately we have to move on. Prof, maybe before you leave, I just want to say to everybody, Prof has written many books and he's got many articles, please. There's one book called The Closing the Gap, the Fourth Industrial Revolution in Africa. So if you're interested in learning more about artificial intelligence and its impact in the financial sector, please do go ahead and get that book. Prof has also got some books on leadership, so leading in the 21st century, the call for a new type of Africa, which is very relevant to, to us being in South Africa, to know what kind of leaders should we be? How are we going to be relevant in the future? And Prof has also written a book called Leadership Lessons from Brooks that I have read. So Prof has covered pretty much all the issues that we are debating with, that we're engaging on in this century to be able to be better leaders. Prof, God bless you. Continue with your wonderful work, and hopefully we'll meet you in Japan sometime as ABSIP. Cheers. Lijona, roribonga amanda, Prof. Okay. Thank you very much. Should we maybe take, no, we're not going to take a break because the Deputy Governor is also under time pressure. But Deputy Governor, that's a beautiful segue into your conversation. So I would like you to please come on stage while I introduce you to everybody who's here, even though you probably do not need much of an introduction. You've been on TV, you've actually been at ABSIP, and we've actually had the privilege of listening to some of your nuggets. So just maybe to introduce our Deputy Governor, Ms. Fundi Chasibana. Our Deputy Governor is also the CEO of the Prudential Authority. Ms. Fundi Chasibana is a Deputy Governor of the South African Reserve Bank, the CEO of the Prudential Authority, and a member of the Monetary Policy. The Prudential Authority regulates banks, insurers, cooperative financial institutions, financial conglomerates, and certain market infrastructure. As CEO of the Prudential Authority, Ms. Chasibana leads the Prudential Cluster of the South African Reserve Bank, which includes the Financial Surveillance Department, and the departments within the Prudential Authority. Before the rotation of the Deputy Governor on 1 April 2022, she oversaw the financial markets and international cluster, and she chaired the board of the Corporation for Public Deposits. Ms. Chasibana joined the South African Reserve Bank in 2018 as advisor to the governor, and she was appointed as the Deputy Governor in 2019 by the President. She's an economist and has got extensive experience in public policy formulation and analysis, having worked at multiple local and international institutions, including the National Treasury, the National Energy Regulator of South Africa, which is known as NERSA, and the International Monetary Fund. At the IMF, she was an alternate executive director on the executive board, which runs the day-to-day operations of the International Monetary Policy, International Monetary Fund. Prior to joining the IMF, Ms. Chasibana was a deputy director general at National Treasury, where she was responsible for macroeconomic policy and economic forecasting. At NERSA, she worked as a senior policy analyst. She holds a Bachelor of Economics honors degree and a Master's of Commerce degree in economics from the University of KwaZulu-Natal. Siyabonga, sister.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be here. ABSIP is always the home for me. So as I was listening to Madam President refer to the history of ABSIP, it struck me that when I joined the public service, actually there was an ABSIP. And it really has been a journey over the past more than 20 years for me of being in public service in different forms. And as I was listening to her make her remarks, I was thinking, actually, why couldn't I have picked a different topic, like on diversity and inclusion, for example, and what are the issues that we're seeing facing women. So I'm digressing from my prepared remarks, but I thought it's sort of useful to reflect on that. And for me in particular, if I think to my ABSIP experience that I want to share around women leadership, is that one of the key turning points for me as a woman leader was actually facilitated by ABSIP. Because there was... So on an annual basis, ABSIP would call on women leaders, and we would have our Queenie Ramotsewa, who would sort of do training. And I'd been a manager and a leader in the public service for some time. But in that segment that I did with our screen, I can't recall now whether it was 2012, 2013, there were some real questions that she put to us around the types of things that we've got to think about, who we want to be, how we contract in all parts of our lives. To say, we contract in the workplace, we don't contract at home, we don't contract in the other relationships that we have around how we want to grow. And she had us do these vision boards of what it is that we wanted to do. And it was quite a profound turning point for me around how I thought about life, around how I planned around my career. So that thought was triggered for me. So now back to today's talk. So before I get to my talk today, I have to say this was a higher grade paper for me. And it really took me back to my days as a young researcher. And listening to Prof now, I was thinking, why couldn't I talk to him first? But it also taught me that I went into the right direction. But I think the bit of homework in thinking about AI and leadership together also gave me the opportunity to have some interesting conversations with my colleagues, but especially with my children about AI, which spanned from conversations about movies to discussions that kids today are having at school about AI themselves. So if you're a Marvel fan, you will know, and I'm a Marvel fan, you will know about Jarvis, who is the smart, witty AI, and then Outron, who was the rogue AI. So as I was talking about my kids, we had these debates about these AI characters and what could happen. And what struck me is that in a more animated way than I'm obviously sharing to you now, there was a debate about whether AI should have a conscience or not. The sort of stuff that the prof was touching on in terms of biases, and how sure we are on whether ChatGPT doesn't grab everything from Wikipedia, which I thought was a very interesting take from younger people who are now dealing with and thinking about AI in a different way to the way that we are thinking about AI. I also heard about how kids today are already utilizing ChatGPT to give them summaries of their Afrikaans book and this. And the observation of the fact that actually 5 different classmates got different summaries because they sat comparing notes. And so that was a very interesting conversation that I had. And at the end of the conversation, as one of my colleagues correctly predicted, my daughter did ask me why I didn't ask ChatGPT to write the speech for me. So perhaps I'll start by saying that these remarks are my own and not produced by generative AI models. Okay. So 3 other important disclaimers, and it was useful that Prof came before me because I'm by no means an expert on AI. So the first disclaimer is this is not a South African Reserve Bank position on AI, because we ourselves are still learning about AI, and I'll spend part of my remarks reflecting on that. The second is that my remarks today don't fully take into account the issues that the prof was touching on, which are quite material around the key challenges in selecting and adapting AI, which relate to data and the specialist skills that are required. So I'm putting all of those things aside. And the third, which the prof touched on and in the question responses, is around the important policy considerations around AI. So he touched on the issue of ethics, for example, among other issues, and the fact that AI is really about the tale of 2 cities. And I think that here there are also issues on the impact of technology and AI on income inequality, on unemployment, and these are captured in a recently published book by Asamogu and Johnson. It's titled Power and Progress, Our 1,000-Year Struggle Over Technology and Prosperity. So it's a good piece of reading that you can add to some of the books that Prof has read, because it gives you a different angle around technology, and it's got some inputs on AI in particular. Now, turning to my exam question, you'll be the judge at the end on whether I tackle it well. So the prof touched on today on, the fact that AI has been around for a number of years and that it is used for multiple applications. So this helps me in that I'm going to skip through and jump through a lot of the items that I had touched on, including an example that is quoted in the book, The Age of AI, around the now famous chess match between AlphaZero, which was an AI program developed by Google DeepMind, and Stockfish, which was the then most powerful chess program in the world, and how these 2 AI pieces played a game of chess and one beat the other, and the differences between the 2. And I think what made this quite remarkable, and the reason why The Age of AI as a book quotes it, is the fact that AlphaZero self-trained itself as an AI model on how to play this game of chess. And it trained itself for 4 hours. And in that 4 hours of training itself then emerged as the most effective chess program, and to date, no human has beaten it. So I'm not going to spend too much time talking about some of the examples that I had thought. So I'm going to charge on forward and talk more about how AI is being used in the financial sector more and more. So in financial services, as the Prof already touched, technology and AI are shaping financial services as we know them, including through large language models that allow big data to be processed with proficiency and efficiency beyond human capability. And this has led to the more customized solutions, quicker processing times. We now have the use of robo-advisors to generate financial advice, and there are trading algorithms to process trades as well as predictive analytics. The jury is, however, out on whether AI in front office enhances the customer experience. I think it will be useful to hear some of your views. I'm sure you've all been called by a very friendly chat bot that says, "Hello, have you heard about this product?" I'd like to know how many of you actually listen when that happens. Okay. So a number of audit firms, a number of analysts out there put together some thought pieces around AI. So I've pulled one or two that I thought you might find a bit interesting. So Deloitte Risk Advisory's Jania Okochiwe provides what I consider to be an accessible summary of how AI is transforming the financial services industry. So in banking, and the Prof has already touched on a lot of these, AI is being used to improve competitive advantage, but also to improve regulatory compliance. So we have fraud and AML detection and prevention as a big part. And in there, she highlights that the increase of fraud-related crimes and ever-changing patterns in financial crimes actually has been an area in banking that has enabled more usage of AI. And with enhanced AI components that are added to existing system, we have been able to identify undetected transaction patterns. And sometimes you get fraud that is there from small amounts. It's 1 rand, it's 1 cent. As humans, you probably gloss over it, but AI is enhancing some of that capability. Part of also what AI has been able to do in fraud and AML detection is looking at data anomalies. Hey, Fundi goes to Pick n Pay 5 days a week usually, but now suddenly she's going 20 times in 1 week. What's happened? Let's have a look a bit more. So these are some of the things, and it's much simpler to pick up suspicious transactions. In credit risk management, AI is used to determine creditworthiness and facilitate borrower lending. Faster decisions, credit decisions are made. There's also predictive analytics, of course, that are utilized in revenue forecasting, in risk monitoring, in case management. So I'm going to pause a little bit to talk about an example which is in the central banking space or has got an impact in the central banking space. And this is the algorithmic trading that Prof was talking about. So in algorithmic trading, you can build you can have a trade method that uses a computer program. You provide it with a set of instructions on how to place trades. And there's increasing use of algorithmic trading in the foreign exchange market. And this is certainly an area that we track and we seek to understand as a central bank. So let me tell you a little bit about why. So the BIS published in 2022 its triannual survey on the foreign exchange market. It is now estimating that almost 75% of spot trading in the FX market is through algo trading. Now, with FX market having become so fragmented over time, these execution algorithms have played an important role in matching the liquidity providers and the consumers. And this in turn has helped to support price discovery. So that is a good thing. However, there are also risks. And then I'll tell you about an incident which I would like to refer to as the Rand flash crash. So the Prophet talked about the flash crash in the New York Stock Exchange. These are generally for short periods of time, but they make for interesting study. So this Rand flash crash occurred during the Asian trading session in January 2016. So during that session, the Rand depreciated by more than 9% against the US dollar in the space of 10 minutes. Although a large part of the losses were recovered during that session, it does tell us about the possibility of what can happen. So our investigation of the incident showed that the crash occurred on the back of algo-driven trades, which prompted mechanistic trading of the Rand and rapid withdrawal of liquidity. Now, that happened during the time in which there wasn't sufficient liquidity in the market. Now, as a central bank, when that happens, here we wake up and there's a market movement. What do? It's an algo-driven trade. So who's in the wrong? Who do you interact with? So it's an AI. It's written by a company. The rules are fair to. So is it the trading entity, the bank or the solo trader that is using the algo, or is the intervention around how the algo rules are written? So it makes for an interesting dynamics on the who and the what, and how do you think about policy problems and policy interventions as a central bank. Now back to my list. Customer relationship management is now an area in which we are seeing financial sector participants using more and more AI to complement the 24-hour relationship management services that are provided to customers, and also to use AI to analyze customer behavior patterns, to automatically perform customer segmentation. And we are seeing very clearly this visible move of AI no longer just being in the back office. It's moving more and more into the front office. But where there are opportunities, there are also risks. In this regard, as advances in technology continue to introduce efficiencies and reduce processing times, as financial regulators, we have to be vigilant about new risks that arise. And I wouldn't be a good regulator if I didn't raise some of these. So you'll note that my list on the risks is a lot longer than the opportunities that I've told you about. So while there's not enough time, I think I'll just highlight very quickly what those risks are. The first risk is about biases that undermine fairness. Prof already spoke about biases, and there are many. This includes potential racial, gender profiling. You can do it by income class in terms of profiling of customers. And in this regards, we are seeing more and more financial regulators putting forward guidance in the financial sector. An example is that the US Securities and Exchange Commission has recently proposed draft guidelines cautioning that when advisors and brokers seek to incorporate new technologies in their services, the advice and recommendations they offer, whether or not based on AI should still be in the interest of clients and retail customers. I'll get back to this issue around the interaction of the humans and AI and accountability very, very soon. There are also reputational risks that might arise from AI. As I said, the jury is still out on whether AI contributes to customer satisfaction. If suddenly you wake up and your bank is now fully digital, you're talking to machines, I think these are some of the trade-offs and the decisions that you might end up with reputational risks. That this bank doesn't treat customers well. We're just only talking to machines. This insurer is not giving me the right answers. There's also the risk of misalignment to customer needs. And if AI is not updated regularly, as rules change, as much as AI can assist in regulatory compliance, entities can also be in regulatory non-compliance. So often when we do our AML CFT inspections, one of the findings that we will have is that, well, the automatic transaction monitoring is not up to date. It's not aligned with what the regulatory requirements are. So the tool is there for the entity to use for regulatory compliance, but if it's not fully aligned and calibrated to the changes that are happening, you can still have findings. Another risk is around data privacy. Now, this is a whole topic on its own. Whose data is it? Is it the customer's data? Is it the entity's data? And there was an interesting court case, I'm not going to spend too much time with it because we don't have time today, between two insurance companies. One insurer was providing a product and said to its customer, if in terms of this other insurer's program, wellness program, you have a rating that looks like this, I will provide you the following. And they were having a fight, the two insurers, about IP. Because the one insurer said, no, this is my information. So I think that there are some interesting issues around data privacy in terms of AI, in terms of how analytics come together. There are also ethical dilemmas. So there are significant dilemmas that are linked to AI. We had a question earlier around the ethical considerations. So, and the entities that are dabbling in these spaces really have to be aware around what the ethical considerations are. I had the privilege probably about 8 years ago of meeting the IBM team that works on the IBM Watson, which is one of the earlier AIs. And there they don't just have programmers, they have psychologists who run the whole program. And nowadays, if you go to the IBM website and you search for IBM Watson, you will see, in addition to the program offering itself, they now have an additional layer, which is about ethics, which is about governance. So ethics and data governance are a very big part of how we should be thinking about AI. And the same rules that we would apply in the PA about how you treat data within your organization, maintaining data integrity, ensuring that there is transparent and explainable data, that also applies to AI. Prof touched on cyber risks, so I'm not going to go into detail. So the more AI is used, the more cyber risks there are. There's also misinformation and manipulation of data, which is another big risk around AI that we have to understand. But there is also a people risk. The more AI we utilize, there is the risk of long-term loss of human capital and also a higher wage premium that might emerge in the financial sector. So if it turns out that all of us can be replaced, those who are able to program the AI to replace us will start to command a bigger and bigger wage premium. And as I highlighted earlier, there are other unintended consequences to which I refer you to Asimoglu and Johnson for elaboration. Now let me turn more to central banks. So central banks are also users of technology, and technology forms a core part of the analytics that we utilized in our supervisory functions as a central bank. So we are now in the space where we are building supervisory technology. We're in the early stages of our build, but as we are building and we're thinking about the utilization of AI, these are some of the issues that we ourselves will have to grapple with. We also utilize technology around our risk management functions, and we are enhancing our analytical capabilities as a central bank, as knowledge organizations. In a recent speech on the future path of central banking, the Deputy Managing General Manager at the Bank for International Settlements, Luís Pereira de Silva, highlights that central banks stand at a crossroads. He talks about a number of forks. So it's a crossroad not only with one fork, but 5. And in his list of 5 is AI. He argues that AI, with its immense capabilities, can play an unknown role if it's not properly supervised. In reference to central banks, Luís paints a picture of the increasing role of AI in monitoring price and financial stability. He posits that there is the possibility that AI might one day take over the decisions, the key decisions of a central bank. So while central banks have always used models to analyze data and project scenarios and make forecasts, these decision-making processes have always been balanced with humans, assessing the risks in a fairly sophisticated way, in a collegial way, and we have a well-tested institutional setup, and we are under the scrutiny of society. So the MPC comes and says, this is what we've decided, and this is what the interest rate is. And I think that the issue is, do we find ourselves in a world where there's no MPC? Do we need the 5 men and women? If it is that our QPM can be able to transcend what it does right now, once it is fed the right information, where we sort of have an AI that we think can optimize, and then we say, well, there's no need for an MPC. Yeah, we've got AI that can do this function. So I think that these are some of the things that we would have to think about in the central banking space. So Luís doesn't touch on this, but I want to share with you one risk that keeps me awake at night, which is related to AI. It is the image of waking up one morning to trending news in media and significant market movements related to a statement made by me or one of my fellow governors, or even made by the Minister of Finance. A statement we didn't make, but appears authentic, because not only will we have the accompanying audio, but you'd have a visual. There's Fundi, I'm standing here in a podium, and you have got visual evidence that this is what I said. And this is the scary side of AI, which is known as deep fake. I'm sure you've all seen the video of Obama where you're not sure, is it Obama, is it not Obama? So there are advances that are there, where, if one talks to futurists out there, there is a lot of AI capability in which, if I was joining you virtually, I just might be sitting at home on my bed, but the image and the vision that you would see would be me standing in a podium like this, and it is a capability in which you can get translations. So I might be talking in one language and then it comes out in another language. So there is a lot of capability that is out there. So I think that the challenge around misinformation and manipulation of AI is a challenge. So very quickly, I've already been talking for long. So let me turn to the so what. So after all, you asked me to talk about leadership in the context of change. So I want to touch on a few points related to leadership. So 3 points I want to make, which is, the first is that AI and available analytics don't absolve leaders from decision making. So that's my takeaway number 1. AI is yet another resource, and we need to manage it as a resource for now. The second is that AI does not remove the accountability from the humans. The third is simply that, as with any transformation journey, inputs and buy-ins from key stakeholders matter as we're thinking about going on this AI journey. So let me elaborate quickly. So in this new paradigm in which humans and machines cooperating is becoming an increasing reality, leaders in organizations need to reflect on how their experiences in managing human resources and processes can be used to integrate transformative technology into our work. So we can't just blindly say, here's AI, we're bringing in AI into our spaces without having an appreciation of these issues. So Goldman Sachs has an interesting article around the future of work in which they touch on this issue. And they have a concept in which they talk about the fact that businesses now need to develop what they term machine capital management. And they reflect on the 5 variables, very familiar 5 variables that we all know. First, selection. We select the humans, so we need to select the AI. So we need to select the AI that is appropriate for our corporate, select the AI that is appropriate for what we are looking to do. So we must recruit the AI. The second is around the development. So in the same way that we develop, train, upskill human resources, our AI will need to be trained, refined for our environment that we're in. We don't just take off the shelf and say that's the end of the story. The third is culture. We also need to consider how the management of our machines reflect the culture of our organizations, because the machines are now one of us. They are projecting us into the world. The fourth is performance management. We need to be clear on how we want the machines to perform and represent us. And then in the same way that we have governance, compliance, risk management, that would apply to the AI as well. Next, on accountability. The accountability to shareholders is going to be there on strategy execution. Whether you have AI or humans, that role needs to happen. And it's important that we keep this in mind as leaders when we make decisions on how to use AI. So in this regard, active assessment on whether AI is utilized in a certain way to achieve certain goals. So in the sub-setting, for example, reflecting on accountability, even if we were to have AI is now the MPC, a human will need to stand up. The governor will have to stand up and say, this is the decision. And he then has to explain how was the decision made in the AI. So more to Prof's point earlier, saying that as leaders within the organization, we have to develop and build an understanding on AI and how it works. We have to still be able to explain the reaction function. So yes, more data is available. Yes, AI can help us develop the complex models, but as leaders, we need to think about governance, we need to think about oversight, we need to think about risk management, we need to think about accountability. We can't just say, well, my credit model had this outcome. It's still the organization's decision. And then the inputs of key stakeholders still matter. So as leaders, we need to pause and reflect on the impact of the new technologies and how they're used in our institutions. So if we're applying the AI inside our organization, we need to have the clarity of objective. If the aim is to enhance back office functions with AI, we then need to tell the users of that information. So we might have excellent AI outputs, but how does the front line utilize that information that comes through in interacting with clients and explaining it with clients? So in this regard, as we bring in AI, we need to still train the humans in the organization to better understand. If the objective of AI is in front line, let's assume we're using our AI to advertise. We still need to go through the same journey, same market research, same focus groups. So do your customers like being spoken to by a robot? All of us put down the phone, oh, it's the bot, I don't want to talk to the bot. We get annoyed, we look for different solutions. And we are starting to see in the financial sector a blended approach, where you will have a guided AI function that sort of says, press this, do this, and then hand you over to the human. So I think these are useful things that we need to talk about. In closing, I want to say that modern leaders are not required to have all the answers in this environment of rapid change. However, we are required to still ask the questions. We must still ask the questions that no one else is asking, and questions that are relevant to our organizational situation, to remain agile and competitive. And the role of AI in this context is to uncover data and to give us insights to support this exercise. So as much as technological advances have been exponential, we are still required to allocate resources in the same way that we are. How are we going to train the AI? Who are the humans who are going to do the work? And then we need to give time to this and to have understanding. So to be effective leaders, we'll need to understand the benefits and the risks of AI, as I highlighted earlier. We need to find ways to identify and harness partnerships with other organizations. So some of us are able to develop our own AI. Sometimes we have to use third parties. But if we're using third parties, we need to understand what are the risks that the third parties bring into our organizations. And as leaders, we'll have to consider the ethical implications of AI. Here, issues of data privacy, biases, and transparency are important for us to take into account. Finally, in managing this significant change, leaders should be prepared to invest in time and resources that are required for organizational change. If you don't do change management, you may as well not have AI. You can invest a lot of money, and as with any other transformation project, you find yourself in trouble. Apologies for taking so long, but that's it from me in terms of my thoughts on this topic. You'll be the judge on how well I answered the exam question.
Standing ovation. Thank you, Deputy Governor.
Thank you.
Yeah. Please, as you will, if you're comfortable to sit or stand in terms of taking the answers. Can I assume that you've got some time to take some questions or not?
I will be told. Okay, yes.
Okay,
Yes.
just one.
No, she just
Oh,
says yes.
it's good. Okay, fantastic. Langa, would you like to ask a question?
Good morning, Madam DG.
Morning.
I only have two questions. The first one is, was it a coincidence that we're both wearing grey suits? I'm sure. No, my
I know, this is the school uniform. Yes.
My question is, Madam Gigi, what are your thoughts on how AI can play a role in advancing financial inclusion? In particular, considering that in the African continent, we do have a massive backlog of people who do not necessarily have access to the financial systems, and will AI play a role? And then the second question that I have is, how will AI impact the future of regulation and monitoring of finance and financial transactions? Thank you.
Okay, so let's start on AI in financial inclusion. I certainly think that there is a lot of scope if one looks at the possibilities of digitization. But having said that, AI is about its own programming. So the issues that Prof was touching on earlier around what do you tell the program. So the program can find you a client, but you profile your client in terms of lending activities, you profile your client in terms of your own internal risk appetite as an entity. I think those issues for me are still going to be drivers. There are, of course, opportunities that I think might exist in terms of analytics, where we might be able to use AI to help us to drill a bit deeper. So if we think about a typical lending model, a typical lending model will say, okay, if Fundi looks like this, lives there, earns this much salary, and has been paying me in this way, I think Fundi will continue to do the same. But there are creative ways in which you could possibly use AI. An example would be, let's just take customers that we have classified as bad payers there. And then you could sort of do deeper analytics and see whether there are certain things and certain traits that you might be able to pick up just from that pool of people that might enable you to have a slightly different lending model. It could also be that the complementary use of big data and other things might allow institutions to mine information differently. And I think that we are seeing those possibilities if we look at how telcos have lent in places like Kenya, for example. So when you utilize big data, there are possibilities, and I think it could open up a whole other world. But as I say, the risk appetite is defined by the lending entity itself and how it wants to do things. And so I think that there are going to be those limitations to AI because AI is still programmed by humans. If we allow the AI to have a mind of its own, it might come up with different thinking. So now, what was the second question? Ooh, I lost it. It is about market. Oh, he's also forgotten. See, it's the gray suits together. No, just say it here, Puti. I can hear you. So just. About regulation.
Regulation and financial transactions.
Yes, about how we, okay. So in the space of regulation, we are, of course, as I said, learning. There are different things that we're doing. So I spoke about algo trading earlier. We are doing a bit of homework on our own. We've got a research project in which we want to understand algo trading in our context. So it will be modular, so we won't wake up and say, here's a set of rules. So this is what we try to do as central banks. We try and learn about the technology a bit more. Generally, what the second position that we would take as a central bank is we would say that as regulators, we are generally technology agnostic. We regulate the activities themselves and what they are. Having said that, we ourselves are also utilizing technology. So there might be some changes in terms of the nature of the interactions that we have, with supervised entities as well, where you might get almost instantaneous exchange of information. And that would be within some of the rules, guidelines that we have that we are refining. We also compare notes with other regulators and other supervisors on what they are seeing in their jurisdictions. So we may well find ourselves, as the world changes and evolves, with different sets of rules around certain activities that are AI-based or that utilize utilize extensive technological requirements. On models, for example, so banks have got all of these complicated and complex risk models that exist in the background. And it's well and good that those models are there, but we need the board to understand the models so that the board is able to actively direct the management of the institution around whether the risk appetite is right or not. And sometimes you get a mismatch where the sophistication of what there is within the entity is not at the level in which is accessible to the board. And that's something that is very important. So Prof himself declared that he used to sit on the board of Nedbank. And as with all other boards, I mean, we hound entities around, we talk to financial institution boards around their understanding around what is going on IT governance. Do they have a look through? Do they see how the IT projects are feeding into strategy? So that's part of the ongoing conversation we have.
Okay. Can we have
There's
a
one
mic
hand
here?
that's been up for a while at the back.
Oh, okay. There we go.
Yeah, she already has the microphone.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Zenande. I am a private equity analyst, but for today, I want to wear the hat of a mathematics tutor at a program called Fund Learning for Youth. It operates in Johannesburg at Alex, as well as in Cape Town in Guguletu. And the reason for this is because, firstly, I'm an alumni of the program. Secondly, I really care about the access to quality education of learners from townships as well as villages. And lastly, I did my primary school in the villages of the Eastern Cape and high school in Cape Town, Langa, where I didn't have access to resources. I had to teach myself English. That's why I'm able to stand up today and speak. But my question to you is, yes, I understand that we're speaking about AI and the future world of work. But as a person who's a tutor in townships, as a person who cares about education, access to education of learners in previously disadvantaged backgrounds, and exposed to learners not having maths teachers, not having textbooks. And so AI is literally at the back of their minds, and they have to use their imagination to imagine a future. So my question is, how do we force, because I believe the word that I should use now is force the government to prioritize or at least care about providing resources to these learners so that they can be able to come here and participate in meetings or events such as these? Thank you.
Thank you. I think that this question on education is really profound. I mean, the challenge that we have as a country is in our own analytics as a country, we don't even need an AI. In the National Development Plan of this country, the access to quality education as step one is there. And it starts in terms of just talking about just childcare from younger children. And there's a lot of work that is done. And I think this is the policy imperative. And as the central bank, we share your concern. We speak in the same voice as you. So when we talk about the importance of structural reforms, just reforms, and I know that structural reforms, when people hear structural reforms, they think the IMF is coming, they're taking our money. That's not what we're talking about. We are talking about reforms that enable you to transform your economy from one form, that the current form that is in, to the economy that you want to grow. And education forms those basics. So as a SARB, we're quite passionate about education programs. And we run programs including the MPC schools challenge as well, because we understand that that is where it starts. You need to have more mathematical training and teaching at school. You need to have the improvement in our literacy scores. And Prof shared the same views as well, because I think even from an ABSIP point of view, everything that we are here talking about on transformation, education is probably the most transformative program that we can have as a country, which provides access and the opportunity for us to retrain people. So if we talk about AI and the future of work, we know that there are going to be potentially job losses in other areas. And this is the point that Prof was making, is we don't know what the future is going to look like, but we know that there will be some job losses. But we need to empower ourselves, and we need to have an empowered society in which people at least have got the seeds to be able to problem solve, to be able to learn different types of skills and to move across in different areas. So thank you very much for that comment. And I think this is something we need to continue championing in our little corners, championing as ABSIP. We will continue to champion as a central bank, because where we are as a country is what is missing is implementation. The diagnostics are there. The diagnostics are in the National Development Plan, which talks about what should be done from early childhood development through to various sectoral initiatives as well, including initiatives around R&D, which is one of the things that come up about South Africa also, is that we don't have enough PhDs, we don't have enough R&D as well.
Next question.
Okay. Who's speaking? No.
Let me go.
Go ahead.
I just have a question. Oh, thank you so much, Deputy Governor. My question is mainly on AI in the context of diversity and inclusion. I think, you spoke about the issues of AI in the context of unemployment and the fact that people are worried about job losses. But whenever we talk about AI, it sounds as though when we bring in the aspect of diversity, inclusion, like we're branching into a different conversation. Because already we're afraid of job losses as an economy, but then from a woman perspective, from a racial perspective, what does that really mean? Perhaps maybe your take on that. We are, in an economy that does face very high levels of unemployment, so this is a huge issue that is being brought up. But should we be having these conversations outside of the diversity and inclusion conversation, or is it actually one thing? And if it is, please can you just help us marry the two together, because right now it seems like it is disjointed.
Yeah, thank you for that question. So I'm quite passionate about diversity and inclusion. In fact, I get very close to being kicked out of certain boardrooms. But I think, the way I think about diversity and inclusion is, for the longest part in the country, we focused on equity and equity scores and how we see things. And I think that getting to the diversity part and what it looks like, I always say that's the easy part. You can say, I have these people and we all look different and we all went to different universities. The inclusion part is the most difficult part for all organizations, because when we hire people, we hire them and we want to put them into different compartments. So I've hired you. You are a credit analyst, and this is what you do. But actually, when I'm looking for my head of risk, even though you understand credit risk, and this is where I keep you in that lane, you don't qualify. So I go out, and then I look for and I search for someone else. And I think this is where the inclusion comes in. It is about training differently. It is about training in a broader way. And so you can train in different ways within organization. You can move people across to increase their exposure. It gives you a lot more scope. But most of the time, the reason why we have to go outside to get the experience, to buy it in, is because the people that are inside organizations are sort of kept in their lanes. Now, that comes with risks, of course. Inclusion comes with risks, but these are management decisions, these are board decisions that need to be taken around what the risks are. And when I talk about risks, the risks are not only for the corporate, the risks are also for the individual themselves. So how early do you put yourself out there to start moving around? So sometimes if you move around from one department to the next, your potential employers will say, oh, she doesn't stay. She doesn't stay in one area long enough. She doesn't have depth in this area. So how do we make these trade-offs for ourselves around finding the right balance between depth and exposure in terms of learning? The other risk, of course, that exists within corporates is sometimes if you keep an individual in the narrow space and they become senior, then the risk becomes large when you move them. It's large for the individual because you're already too senior, and then you're going to go into an area and then you're going to fail. What does that mean? And this is a tension, and it's especially there for us as women. In areas in which we don't have much support, or we don't have people like us where we could ask questions or who walk the journey, and this is part of the challenge. So, as I said earlier, I regard AI as a resource. Our head of IT and our chief information officer at the Reserve Bank is a woman, very smart woman. Our head of architecture, who's now been poached by a bank, used to be a woman. So I think for me, it is part of the same conversation that we have to have. So diversity and inclusion is there in all aspects of the work that we do. If we say we are an inclusive organization, if we say we have that approach even when it comes to our clients, that's also something that's important to take into account. How you program your AI. If the bulk of your clients are women, who are you going to ask if you don't have the people who are providing the input data who are women, who are a different race group? So these are the types of things that are important in product design and product build. So we had a conference last year. It was a conference of the Association of Insurance Supervisors. And we were having the discussion around diversity and inclusion in that broader context, because diversity and inclusion is not just about you and your staff. It is also about the spaces in which you trade. It is also about your product offerings. And so if we take AI in that context, and the fact that AI is yet another tool in your strategy, I think diversity and inclusion sits squarely in that conversation and that discussion. Thanks.
Good morning, Deputy Governor. I'm representing the CFA Society of South Africa. It's a bit more of a narrow question related to South Africa's grey listing, and the role that the SARB is playing in relation to mitigating some of the steps required to get us off the grey list. You mentioned that the SARB is also busy with an AI build at the moment. Is any of that related to mitigating some of the risks around the grey listing? And if you could also just give sort of a general view on your perspective of AI in relation to mitigating South Africa's grey listing. I understand it's a multi-stakeholder approach, but specific to the SARB. Thank you.
Yeah. So the SARB is not building own AI. Ooh, I'm going to be in trouble when I get back. So we have got multiple IT programs, and AI was sort of part of that layer. So in some parts of the bank, we are doing a tiny experiment around IT bots and how we might be using them. So we are nowhere near where the banks are in terms of broader analytics and broader use of AI. So that first qualifier. So in our IT build, and I'm going to talk about our supervisory technology now. So as we've been building our supervisory technology solution, Umoja, remember we receive risk returns from banks. So as we receive the returns, currently it's a manual process. As we are enhancing our supervisory technology, building the AML part, that was the first output that we had to complete in order to fulfill our requirements as part of our reporting to FATF last year. This was already before the grey listing process. So that's the direct question on that, and we will continue to enhance on the AML CFT side of our supervisory technology. But generally on the FATF grey listing process, there is an interdepartmental committee which is led by the National Treasury. All of us feed into that. So as part of the grey listing, there is an action list that FATF puts out. And in that action list, there are activities that need to be completed. The SARB has got 2 direct ones. So the first relates to proactive identification and an investigation of illegal money value transfer services. So this is not in the formal space, this is in the informal space. So the so-called Hawala system, understanding that better and moving it in a more transparent, supervised space. So that is the work that our financial surveillance department is busy with. The deadline for delivery of that is 2025. And then in the PA space, what FATF said was we're too generous. So we didn't get found lacking in terms of taking administrative action against entities. But FATF said that our administrative sanctions are not proportionate to the contraventions that are performed, and that we have to strengthen that to make sure that they are proportionate to the size of the contravention and that they are dissuasive. And they base that on the findings that you make at a point in time, the fines that are issued or the administrative action taken compared to another point in time. So we need time on our side in order to make sure that by 2025 we can ably demonstrate to FATF that this is what we've done. So that work continues to be underway.
Okay. Thank you, Nicola. Anyone else want to ask questions?
Thank you so much, Deputy Governor. My name is Anele Poku from Latera Earth Sciences. I'm an environmental practitioner and a sustainability practitioner. My question is around ESG reporting and how AI can be used to shift ESG reporting from being a checkbox activity, which is a bit of a sore point for me because that's what I'm finding it's happening in the industry, that it's not actually done as a tool to manage risks, but as a tick box exercise.
Okay, that's another higher grade question, like ultra higher grade. So I'm by no means an ESG expert. I mean, I can see potentially opportunities, and I'm going to narrow because, as I said, I'm not an ESG expert, so I'll talk more about the E side, which is the one that we are spending a lot more time on as the Prudential Authority, because we are looking to understand climate-related risks that entities are dealing with. And when it comes to climate-related risk, it's not about the entity itself, it's not about the bank or the pension fund itself, or about the insurer itself, but about how the climate risks faced by their client would then impact them and how then they respond. So there's a lot of data that needs to get collected. And I think this is where AI will be able to assist, because the cost to the entities, to individual entities, in collecting some of the data, which might be more universal, can become prohibitive. So if, say, everyone then has to go pay a consultant firm to be doing more of the same, or the individual entities themselves, let's say mining, the miners don't have enough cash to understand, or you have a factory that is somewhere in KZN that might be prone to flood risk. And you are a medium-sized enterprise. So, and then your bank says to you, can you provide me with information on how you are affected by climate-related risks? So I think that there are opportunities to mine some pools of data where there are common collection practices. So if we are all at the corner of, I don't know, Tom Jones Street in Benoni, then we shouldn't all be collecting information about Tom Jones Street in Benoni. We just need one point of information collection about the risks related to that point. And then how we think about that information. So I think there are certainly opportunities in that regard. And in some instances, you can get international organizations that are sitting on information. So the Prof is at the United Nations University. I've done a lot of work with the United Nations University in the past around the building and the development of climate models. So how do you then feed climate into economic models? So I think that there's a lot of information that sits across multiple parties, and that there might be opportunities to think about aggregation. Now, there is a debate, of course, around where that aggregation sits. Does it sit with a neutral party, or does it sit with individuals who end up selling that information, and what does that mean? I think on the social side and the governance side, there are choices that corporates often make themselves, which for me makes it not so easy to be able to talk about what corporates regard as important social issues. So for some corporates, when they think about social, they will link the E and the S to say, when they say talking about, well, stopping lending to coal miners, what does that mean to those areas in which there are coal mining? There's coal mining in. But there are some corporates in which they are not lending to mines, where they think about social, if they're doing primarily retail, and they're lending to us in the room, they think about, well, what does social mean for them? So I think for me, definition of what ESG requires. On our side, we ask the boards to be accountable, to be clear, and don't put in things just to tick if you can't explain them. And I think that the JSE might have some interesting insights on how they themselves are thinking about the tick box. I think greenwashing was also an example of what has been in the public domain more recently, about entities saying, I'm green, but when the work is done fully, you're not quite fully, you don't meet the definitions. There's some definitions that I think we need to move to a space of having clearer definitions about what are these definitions, but in the way that we interact with the entities that we supervise, we always ask them, what does this mean? What have you done here exactly? So there is a need for more interrogation and to require better accountability in terms of how information is presented.
Thank you, Deputy Governor. I think I'm going one last question.
Thank you, Deputy Governor. My question is related to the fact that you say that you see and view AI as a resource in our companies. And you also mentioned that as an effective leader, we need to learn how to adapt and to manage it. So now I want to know that how can we counter our teams from being completely dependent on AI in the organization? Because I've also noticed as well that even in our institutions, because I'm a student at UJ, we have started to depend on AI even for our essays or any assignment, as well as I also have younger siblings, and sometimes when they're given essays at schools, they're now using it to do the essay, and then they just change one thing or the other. So how can we maintain relevance as an upcoming generation and as future leaders? How can we counter complete dependence on AI, and how can we maintain relevance?
So if I reflect on my own dependence on AI too, I think that there is, it's a fine line. I will liken AI to, for those of us who are older, to the calculator. Remember, you used to be clobbered at school by your teachers. You're not allowed to use this, it must be your brain. So, and as I reflect on resources are used differently. They are but one input. And the governor always has this comment when we talk about the models that we get at the Reserve Bank to say, our quarterly projection model is the first voting member of the MPC, because that number is out there. It's important that even as you get information from outside, you ask yourself questions about the information that you're getting outside. And this is certainly what I continue to teach and what I share with colleagues as well. So does this information create and result in a bias of a different sort? And this is where the colleagues' question around diversity and inclusion come in. If we've all had different experiences, one of us will say, this does not talk to my lived experience. Or in this other place that I've been, or this other article that I read, they had something else that is different. And I think for me, that's where the interrogation comes in. And I try to teach this to my peers, to my colleagues, and even to my own children, is to ask yourself, is there another way? Is there something else? And look across different resources. So don't just go to one website, go to 5. I know it's time consuming and sometimes you don't have time. Sometimes just call someone else and ask them, what do you think? They might say something that might jog your memory. And it's exactly like that in our own MPC too. So we come in and we all see data differently. We all see risks differently. So I think it's important, even as you are developing this dependence of technology, to try and source information from different parts and to not stop asking the question. And sometimes, and that's why I was reflecting on the conversation with my kids, because you'll tell them something and they'll come at it and say, no, but in that movie it didn't happen that way. And then you sit and you have this fight with them about this one singular thing, but actually on reflection, it's just about understanding that you get different views from different sources, and sometimes there are things that are not the usual mainstream of things that jog your memory and that cause you to think differently. And Prof touched on it quite beautifully as he was closing up, about the importance of taking interest in other areas of learning rather than your own. So when he was talking about the importance of scientists to have an understanding and appreciation of the humanities, of the arts, so reading widely, looking at wider sources, talking to people around you and asking them questions. I think that for me is the only advice I can give, and sometimes we're scared of making ourselves vulnerable. And we sit and we have a question about, no, but what do you mean on this particular issue? So also asking questions to people who might appear to be experts, because sometimes they themselves don't understand until they are asked, what do you mean? And give them that bit of homework to try and simplify, because sometimes too much jargon might result us in missing actually what are the basics and the different things we ought to be learning. So that's it from me. Thank you very much for keeping me on my toes.
Thank you, Deputy Governor. You have been so gracious with your time and, so comprehensively answering all the questions. Just to summarize, try and summarize all the nuggets that you have shared, is that, AI can be used as a tool to uncover data, and it really allows us as leaders then to ask the right question and implement the solution to address our very unique corporate strategies. And we always then are helped by these so that we can always continue to be accountable, because that is critical. Thank you for that. Without further ado, because I do realize we've got time constraints, I'm going to ask that Nomonde, you can maybe present the Deputy Governor with her gift. Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Governor. Have a safe travel. Thank you. Okay, so next in line, I think we're going to move into the videos. Thank you so much. Travel safely, Deputy Governor, and we wish to call upon you again next time. But now we're going to jump straight into the videos for our main sponsor, which is Ashburton Investments. And after the videos, we'd actually ask everybody to take a 10-minute break, because I'm sure you've been sitting for way too long. So without further ado, Tapua, please just help us with the videos.
Achievement is deliberate. To build, grow, or progress requires a vision powerful enough to drive you and outlast the headlines. The question is, are you fully invested in what you want to achieve? And do you have an investment partner as fully invested in your outcomes as you are? Ashburton Investments, fully invested. Ashburton Investments is a manager of collective investment schemes and is part of the First Rand Group. Ashburton Fund Managers is an authorized FSP.
My personal belief is that teams that are not diverse are not as successful. So, very important that leadership teams are diverse in terms of age, gender, different types of skills. Now, an organization that does not have women in senior and leadership positions, I think, sets itself to achieve less than what it's actually capable of achieving. So, if we look at our society and we look at the demographics of everywhere where we operate, I think it's important that the different leadership structures always reflect that. Otherwise, the organization faces a risk of not being in touch with its customers, with its employees, and really its mandate to deliver to society. So I look forward to the continued strides that women are making in organizations rising, through the system. I look forward to an environment one day where we don't even have to discuss the need for women in leadership positions. And on the question of the value women bring to leadership positions, I personally think it's an odd question. Nobody ever really wonders what value men bring to leadership positions. So I think as women, we must try maybe not even get caught up in answering that question. Of course, I think we are first and foremost hired for the skills we have, for the experience, and the value that we can add in organizations. And I think as human beings, as skilled professionals, that's what we bring. I personally don't focus on additional things that I bring to work as a woman, because the job can be done by a male, and I don't think that's really the differentiator in terms of my responsibilities and what I bring to the organization.